This is the Yorkshire Voice Newscast, brought to you by Leeds Trinity University.
Hello and welcome to Hello and welcome to Newscast. And we have a fair amount of news stories for you today. The first big story that has been broken over the course of the day is obviously the creation of this new Super League. The creation of the Super League appears to have been met with widespread opposition from fans of all clubs so far. 6 English teams have joined 12 sides from the continent in agreeing to a new competition. UEFA and FIFA are actually threatening to punish those involved, and Boris Johnson says ministers will do all they can to stop it from going ahead in its current form. We also have news on 2 men, one from Shipley, who are due to appear in court, charged in relation to an incident in Swarcliffe in Leeds last Tuesday involving a machete. Our reporter Martha Sanders has more.
23-year-old Joshua Tillard has been charged with causing grievous bodily harm. This comes after an 18-year-old suffered a severed hand as a result of a machete attack on Tuesday last week. Tillard is due to appear alongside 24-year-old Kyle Hughes, who has been charged with violent disorder in relation to the same incident. Tillard is also charged with dangerous driving and failing to stop when asked by the police.
And today we are joined by Riccardo Trono to discuss all the news that has been taking place over the course of today. Our next story is with regards to NASA and what they have actually been able to accomplish. They have been able to fly a drone on another planet for the first time ever. A solar-powered mini helicopter hovered above the surface of Mars as planned. NASA's mission control has shown a video which took more than 3 hours to be beamed back to Earth.
Shows us hovering our 3 meters above the Martian surface and then touching back down. It's amazing, brilliant. Everyone is super excited.
So I would say it's a success. I would say.
And finally, our main story of today is obviously with regards to the European Super League. And we have Riccardo Trono in the studio with us today to discuss this whole situation. Tell me, what do you think, Riccardo, about this whole new league that's basically being created?
Hi, Matt. Thank you, and good afternoon to all of our listeners. Yeah, this is a big thing. Of course, this is not something that came out of the blue completely. There's been plenty of talk in the last few years about the possibility, that these big European clubs might break away from the from the football style of football that we've been knowing over the last few years. And then this happened yesterday in the space of just one day. So it came as a big shock, to all of us, they are in love with this game. And the thing is, so if we were kind of in the mindset already that this was meant to be happening one day, the timing, I think, is just completely wrong. Because we're in the midst of a pandemic, and not these big clubs, in some extent they have as well, but clubs, from the lower leagues, grassroots, football, they've been taking the brunt of this pandemic, and stadiums are still closed. So this is something that it has to do with the elite, and football is a sport, of everybody really. It is a game that all of us has love, and so this is really to do with the timing, and because the race for the Champions League is still on and you cannot take it for granted. So there are teams like Manchester City who are of course poised to win the title, but also teams like Liverpool, for example, in England, Tottenham, AC Milan in Italy, they're still fighting to get a Champions League position. So like, how can you really talk about that now that you still don't know whether you're going to be qualified for that? So I think the timing was completely wrong. They should have waited until at least the end of the season to make this statement.
Because I think what you said there is quite right. We're in the middle of a pandemic. Financially, clubs in lower leagues have actually really been punished. And all of a sudden, these 6 clubs in England are saying, actually, do you know what? We want our own league and we're just going to up sticks and move. How is that fair? And for other teams on the continent to actually join them, it just doesn't seem right to me. And we actually had a chat with Joe Urquhart from the Yorkshire Evening Post to see his views on the whole situation.
It's been quite a 24 hours, hasn't it, for sort of football since the reports first emerged. I think it was this time yesterday on Sunday. And I think a lot of fans have been left baffled by it again. I mean, we all knew that supporters were at the bottom of the food chain, but I think this sort of European Super League idea just sort of emphasises that point. I think it's the rich trying to get richer, and I think it's going to be a real shame for football clubs in this country if it does happen. I think the governing bodies in each of the countries that these clubs have decided to sort of come together and make these the Premier League, La Liga, Serie A, they need to take a very hardline stance on this, because it's going to threaten the very existence of a lot of clubs throughout. I think the arrogance that the clubs have shown as well is of another level. You know, the way that they're trying to perceive that it's for the greater good of football. I think the whole thing is a sham, really, and like I say, it's just the rich getting richer. And for clubs like Leeds United on a local level, it's very much of clubs trying to shut the door on people and ambitious owners like Andrea Radrizzani or those at Leicester or at Aston Villa are trying to break into the mould of the Champions League.
This kind of leads to the next question, really, because of course we know that in the last few years there's been plenty of talk, about the possibility that these big European clubs would literally break away and form a European league on their own. And now that this has indeed happened, we are in a point of time in which any sector of the economy is trying to get back on its feet and is suffering for what has happened in the last year. So now, what do you think the impact on football as a whole is going to be?
It's difficult to say, I think, at the moment in terms of what it might be. I mean, we've already seen the effect of the transfer market of COVID, of the lack of spending. I think this summer is going to be interesting to see how much the spending comes back. I think January was sort of a slight indicator. There wasn't much movement at all, really, across Europe. I mean, January is naturally a difficult window anyway, because it tends to push prices up with clubs being desperate. But I think this summer will really show just how much sort of COVID has really damaged the sport. But I think it's also a bit of a response to the economic aspect that the clubs have decided to go ahead and push with these plans now. I think there's a lot of convenience in fans not being in the stands while they do this as well. So, this threat has always been there for a while. There's always been sort of this talk, I think you just touched on it there, about them potentially doing this, but it sort of feels all very convenient, I think. And it'll be interesting to see how this sort of plays out. But I think the economic aspect, I think it'll be really sort of shown this summer, and whether clubs do sort of pull back from spending quite as much in the transfer market. Obviously, the revenue streams for those sort of further down the Premier League have been really smashed by not having fans through the turnstiles. So, when you're looking at on a local level, sort of around Yorkshire, Huddersfield, Bradford, teams like that are really going to be feeling the bite sort of come August, by the time we're hopefully letting fans through the door. So it's going to be a bit of a trickle down effect. And like I say, with this sort of European Super League, if it is a breakaway, then you've got a lot of commercial revenue attached to having Liverpool on Super Sunday, having Manchester United v Manchester City on a Saturday afternoon. So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah. And that sort of leads into the next question, weirdly enough, which is with the new structure for the Champions League actually set to be announced today, how do you think all of this will affect it? Because obviously for these teams to leave their own leagues and set up their own structured league, surely this will have an impact on UEFA's plans for the new structure for the Champions League.
Yeah, I mean, if you're being really, well, as we all are approaching this sort of breakaway idea with sort of quite a lot of a cynical attitude. I think that it's just a power move at the moment in that these clubs want to show that they are, the ones that drive the revenue to European football. It's a shame, because the European Cup has got a long-standing tradition, hasn't it? And the Champions League in the current form brings a lot of sort of nostalgia back. And I think fans of these big clubs have been as vocal as anyone else, really. Liverpool fans, Man U fans, Man City fans, Chelsea fans. There'll be a very small minority who just follow the club because it's the club. But I think breaking away from the Champions League and the traditions that it has, there's been a lot of input from these big clubs over the reforms, and you'd argue that UEFA has sort of bowed to the power of them, because the teams like Juventus, for example, who are trying to sort of use it to make sure that they can get in the Champions League and get through to the further sort of stages, because they keep coming unstuck against teams like Porto and Ajax. That's a very cynical way of looking at it, but it's hard not to have that attitude, isn't it? Of, well, if they're guaranteed to be in the European Super League, then they're guaranteed to sort of be in the more latter stages at the end of it. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how the Champions League goes forward if this does happen, because obviously with the way that UEFA in the Premier League and everyone's sort of threatened these clubs of not playing domestically, you do wonder how that sort of shapes the competition going forward.
Yeah, the last question really is about Leeds United, who of course are among the teams that are not set to be taking part in this competition. They're playing Liverpool tonight, which is one of the teams that are taking part in this. So just wanted to say, what do you expect from the game, especially from the point of view of what do you think Liverpool might expect in the post-match, encounter with journalists? Kind of thing.
It's going to be interesting, because obviously Jurgen Klopp is very much a man of the people. I think he's very much of mind of socialism and things like that, and that is for the greater good. So it will be interesting to see his views. I think the game will be dominated by this talk now, which is a shame really for, I think, former Leeds United aspect, because it's what a game it is for the club. The first season back in the Premier League to host the reigning Premier League champions at Ellen Road. It's a real shame there's going to be no fans there, and this sort of has dominated and will dominate the build-up and post-match. It'll be interesting, because obviously Jurgen Klopp was speaking in midweek after the exit in the Champions League about the fact that they were only 3 points off the Champions League. They're in 6th place, and the rest of Liverpool's games this season are going to be aimed towards reaching that Champions League spot, but that's been rendered useless now, because if Liverpool do go and break away, then there's no jeopardy there for missing out. They're guaranteed a spot in the European Super League. So it's going to be interesting to hear his thoughts. I imagine Marcelo Bielsa will be asked as well. We already know what he'll say. He's very much of sound understanding of it's a fans game. It's about the people who enjoy the sport. And one of his quotes last summer was quite interesting about the development of football without fans in the stands, and the fact that we can't get to a model where football is sustainable without having supporters in the stands. We want to see fans back in the stadiums. So it'll be interesting to see what both managers say. Like you said there, I think it'll be completely dominated by this talk, and it'll be interesting to see the stance that Klopp sort of takes.
So that was Joe Urquhart from the Yorkshire Evening Post talking about basically the new structure from this European Super League. Ricardo, I just want to have a quick chat with you about this. How do you see the fans responding to this? Because obviously it's the fans who will basically be impacted by this in the end. So what do you think that their reaction could be?
I think the effect on, the fans base is going to be very heavy. It's going to be very impactful. And I was just thinking, let's take, for example, the case of Atalanta in Italy. Mm-hmm. We're talking about a team that in the last few years have probably played the best football in Italy. But until 4 or 5 years ago, no one would know about Atalanta anywhere in Europe. They were an obscure team. And now look at what is happening. They're there. They're playing the likes of Liverpool, Real Madrid, Valencia and stuff. This is going to take a huge impact, on the economy of that town. Champions League is not just about, the joy of playing these big teams. It is also the effect that is going to, the positive effect that is going to have on this team. They need playing with these big teams to survive, to get on, like to become more important, to have an effect on football. So like, I don't think, like, personally, I think we should just follow the example of Germany, because of course, like, the managerial structure in Germany requires on the 51% of the shares be owned by the fans. So if Bayern Munich were to take part in this, they would have to ask the fans first. And this has not happened with, for example, the British teams or the Italian teams or the Spanish teams. I think football is the fans. So we've just forgotten where we're coming from, really.
Exactly. Because, I mean, like you said there, football is nothing without the fans. Because, I mean, there are a number of teams in England whose history is basically built by the fans. I mean, Man United, Arsenal, and Liverpool, a number of these teams who are deciding to go away, without the fans, I'm being honest, they wouldn't actually be where they are today. They wouldn't be who they are today. They wouldn't have built up the image. And I just think that this is a really sad situation that's sort of come up.
Yeah,
really.
And just to build like on what you're saying, like, it's not just the fans. They take a huge role in this, of course, but we're just talking about the history behind these teams, really. Like, we're talking about Liverpool, they've won it 6 times. We're talking about Real Madrid, they've won it 13 times. We're talking about AC Milan 7 times. It's like, how can you basically leave the competition that made who you are? This is having a huge impact, like, on the Champions League, on football. Everyone, when they start playing football, they love of playing in the Champions League. Like, so, like, and also they think that you're not gonna be relegated. This is totally destroying the beauty and tragedy at the same time of football. The dream that you can go there and win it, but you can also do very bad, notwithstanding who you are and the team you have. So like, this is destroying the magic of football, really.
Yeah. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens, really. And tune in again tomorrow on tomorrow's episode of Newscast for more roundup of the news stories that come through tomorrow.